At the Metro Richmond Zoo, where morning mist clings to enclosures and wild hearts beat behind bars, Dr. Emily Martinez faced her greatest challenge, entering the den of a volatile bobcat. Milani, fiercely protective and known for her aggression toward humans, a bobcat with scars mapping a brutal past, was about to give birth. But something was terribly wrong. The birth wasn't going as planned. 4 cubs had arrived, but the 5th, the one fighting for life, wasn't coming. What happened next in that enclosure would defy everything they thought they knew about wild animals. Milani, the untamable bobcat, did something so unexpected, so utterly astonishing, that it left the entire staff breathless and changed the future of her species forever. Before we start, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The morning mist hung heavy over the Metro Richmond Zoo as Dr. Emily Martinez clutched her coffee with trembling hands. At 28, she was the youngest veterinarian on staff, and today would be her biggest test yet. Through the steam rising from her cup, she watched the security monitors displaying the bobcat enclosure, where Milani paced restlessly in her birthing den. "She's been at it for 3 hours now," whispered Tom Henderson, the zoo's senior keeper, his weathered face etched with concern. "First cub came out strong, but she's struggling with the others." Emily nodded, her stomach churning with a mixture of excitement and dread. Milani wasn't just any bobcat. She was a miracle wrapped in spotted fur and fierce amber eyes. 5 years ago, wildlife officers had found her barely alive in a poacher's trap in the mountains of Montana, her abdomen torn open by crude wire snares. The fact that she'd survived at all was remarkable. That she was now giving birth was nothing short of extraordinary. "Remember what happened last time someone tried to check on her during feeding?" Tom's assistant, Marcus Williams, rubbed his bandaged forearm unconsciously. "She nearly took my hand off, and that was just over food. Can't imagine what she'll do to protect newborns." The entire veterinary team huddled around the monitors, watching as Milani's sides heaved with another contraction. Dr. Richard Coleman, the zoo's director, stood rigid beside them, his phone buzzing constantly with calls from conservation groups across the country. This wasn't just another birth. It was a pivotal moment for North American bobcat conservation. 4 cubs now, someone whispered, and a collective breath was released. But the ultrasounds had shown 5. They waited, minutes stretching like hours, until finally, a 5th tiny form appeared. Even through the grainy security footage, they could see something was wrong. The cub was smaller, its movements weaker than its siblings. "I'm going in," Emily announced, her voice steadier than her hands. "Are you insane?" Marcus stepped forward. "She'll tear you apart. We should wait." "That cub needs help now," Emily interrupted, already pulling on her protective gear. "Every second counts." Tom placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I've worked with Milani for 5 years. She's never let anyone near her when she's vulnerable, but..." He paused, studying the monitor where Milani was now lying still, her breathing labored. "Something's different today. Just be careful, Doc." The walk to the enclosure felt endless. Emily's boots crunched on the gravel path, each step echoing her racing heartbeat. She thought of her grandmother, who'd raised her after her parents died, always telling her that animals could sense a pure heart. "They know when you mean to help," Grandma Rose would say, her wrinkled hands gentle on injured birds and stray cats. The enclosure door creaked open, and Emily froze. Milani's head snapped up, her eyes, those incredible golden eyes, locked onto the intruder. For a moment that stretched into eternity, predator and veterinarian assessed each other. "Hey, beautiful," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. "I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But your baby needs help." What happened next would be whispered about in zoo circles for years to come. Milani, the fierce, untouchable bobcat who'd never allowed human contact beyond the absolute necessary, did something unprecedented. She rolled onto her side, exposing her vulnerable belly and her precious cubs, and gave a soft chirrup, the sound mother bobcats make to call their young. Emily's eyes filled with tears as she slowly approached. "Oh, sweetheart," she breathed, kneeling beside the magnificent creature. "You know, don't you? You know I'm here to help." Working quickly but gently, Emily examined each cub. 4 were perfect, tiny bundles of spotted fur with strong heartbeats and eager mouths already seeking milk. But the 5th, her heart sank as she lifted the smallest cub. Its breathing was shallow, labored. A quick examination revealed the terrible truth. Severe birth defects, lungs that would never fully expand, a heart that beat irregularly. Milani watched every movement, her eyes never leaving Emily's hands. When the vet's shoulders began to shake with silent sobs, the bobcat did something that defied every textbook Emily had ever read. She reached out with one massive paw and gently touched Emily's knee, a gesture so human-like in its comfort that Emily nearly gasped. "I'm so sorry," Emily whispered, cradling the dying cub. "I'm so sorry." The next hour was a blur of desperate attempts. Oxygen, medications, gentle chest compressions on a body no bigger than Emily's palm. But nature, in its cruel wisdom, had already made its decision. As the tiny cub drew its last breath, Milani gave a low, mournful cry that seemed to echo the grief in Emily's own heart. The walk back to the veterinary building, carrying the small body wrapped in a soft towel, was the longest of Emily's life. The team met her with silent understanding, and even gruff Tom had to turn away to wipe his eyes. "You did everything you could, Doctor," Coleman said softly. "She let me help," Emily managed through her tears. "She trusted me." "That's the miracle here," Tom added, his voice rough with emotion. "In 30 years of working with wild cats, I've never seen anything like it." The days that followed were a whirlwind of round-the-clock care. The 4 surviving cubs, named Hope, Courage, Spirit, and Grace by the staff, thrived under their mother's care and the team's supplemental feeding. But the biggest transformation was in Milani herself. The bobcat who had once snarled at every approach now chirruped softly when Emily entered her enclosure. She would present her cubs for inspection, allowing the young vet to weigh them, check their health, even vaccinate them when the time came. The bond that had formed in that moment of shared grief had evolved into something beautiful and rare. "She sees you as part of her family now," Tom observed one afternoon, watching as Milani actually rubbed her head against Emily's leg while the vet bottle-fed Grace, the smallest survivor who needed extra nutrition. "In all my years, it's like she understands you saved her babies." Word of Milani's remarkable story spread. Donations poured in from around the world, funding expanded conservation programs. School children sent drawings of bobcats, and researchers came to study the unprecedented bond between wild animal and human caregiver. 2 years later, when Milani's eyes met Emily's across the enclosure and the vet saw the telltale signs of another pregnancy, she felt a familiar flutter of anxiety mixed with joy. But this time, Milani wasn't alone. Two other female bobcats in the conservation program, Vela and Wai-Hai, were also expecting. Vela in particular was proving difficult. Younger and more aggressive than Milani, she'd been rescued from an illegal pet situation and had never properly socialized with either bobcats or humans. Her pregnancy made her even more volatile, and she'd already injured one keeper who'd gotten too close during feeding time. "We need to separate them," Marcus argued during a staff meeting. "Vela's getting worse. Yesterday she nearly attacked Wai-Hai over a piece of meat." "We don't have the space, Doctor," Coleman replied, rubbing his temples. "The new enclosure won't be ready for another month." It was Milani who solved the problem in her own way. The next morning, when Vela began stalking toward Marcus as he cleaned the enclosure, Milani intervened. The older bobcat planted herself between Vela and the keeper, her ears flat against her head, and let out a yowl that could be heard throughout the zoo. It wasn't just a warning, it was a declaration of authority. Vela, despite being younger and stronger, backed down immediately. From that day forward, Milani became the unofficial matriarch of the Bobcat program, keeping peace through a combination of stern looks and occasional disciplinary swats. "She's protecting us," Emily marveled, watching Milani break up another potential confrontation. "She actually understands that we're trying to help." The births, when they came, were both triumphant and heartbreaking. Over 11 days, 13 cubs were born. Milani delivered 3 healthy cubs with Emily by her side, the bobcat actually purring, a rare sound for the species, as the vet helped clean and examine each newborn. Wai-Hai, calmer by nature, managed her delivery well, producing 4 cubs that immediately began nursing. But Vela's aggression complicated her labor. Despite the team's best efforts, she lost 2 cubs to the same breathing complications that had claimed Milani's 5th cub years before. "It's the inbreeding," Dr. Coleman explained sadly. "Generations of limited genetic diversity in wild populations. That's why every healthy cub is so precious." Vela's grief manifested as increased aggression, but once again, Milani intervened. The older bobcat would sit near Vela's den, not intruding but present, occasionally grooming the younger cat when she allowed it. Slowly, Vela began to calm, even accepting help from Emily, though never with the trust Milani showed. The 13 cubs brought national attention to the Metro Richmond Zoo. The Run Wild fundraiser, inspired by a viral video of Milani's cubs play-fighting while their mother watched indulgently, raised over $500,000 for bobcat conservation. Research grants poured in, and the zoo became a leading center for bobcat breeding and rehabilitation. But for Emily, the professional accolades paled beside the personal moments. The morning Milani's first daughter, Hope, gave birth to cubs of her own, with both Milani and Emily present. The afternoon spirit, now a magnificent adult male, was successfully released into a protected Montana wilderness, the first captive-bred bobcat to be reintroduced to the wild in over a decade. The quiet evenings when Milani, now graying around her muzzle, would purr contentedly as Emily sat beside her, both watching the sunset through the enclosure's skylights. "You know what the native tribes used to say about bobcats?" Tom asked one such evening, joining Emily outside Milani's enclosure. The old bobcat was curled up with her latest litter, her 4th, while her adult daughters lounged nearby with cubs of their own. Emily shook her head, smiling as one of the newest cubs pounced on Milani's twitching tail. "They called them the keepers of secrets," Tom continued. "Said they could see into a person's heart and judge their true nature. They'd only show themselves to those worthy of their trust." "She changed everything," Emily said softly. "Not just for the conservation program, But for me, she taught me that connection transcends species, that trust can bloom in the most unlikely places. 90 cubs now, Tom added with pride. 90 bobcats born here, many released to the wild, others serving as ambassadors in zoos worldwide. And it all started with one wounded girl who decided to trust. As if sensing she was being discussed, Milani lifted her head and looked directly at Emily. Even after all these years, those amber eyes still held mysteries, still spoke of wild places and ancient instincts. But now they also held something else. A warmth, a recognition, a bond forged in a moment of shared grief and mutual need. The next morning brought exciting news. The genetic analysis from the latest cubs showed increased diversity. The careful breeding program was working. Several conservation areas in Colorado and Montana had reported sightings of the released bobcats, with at least 2 confirmed breeding pairs establishing territories. "We're actually doing it, Doctor," Coleman announced at the staff meeting, his usual stoic demeanor cracking to reveal genuine emotion. "We're bringing them back from the brink." But the real celebration came that afternoon. As Emily made her rounds, she found Milani in an unusual position, standing at the fence that separated her enclosure from the public viewing area. A little girl in a wheelchair, no more than 6 years old, was pressed against the glass, her eyes wide with wonder. "She won't move," the girl's mother explained apologetically. "We've been here an hour. I'm sorry if we're disturbing." No, Emily interrupted, watching Milani's focused attention on the child. "This is unusual." The little girl raised a thin hand to the glass, and Milani moved closer, placing her own paw against the barrier where the child's hand rested. They stayed like that for long minutes, the dying light of autumn casting golden shadows across both figures. "She's saying hello," the girl announced with the certainty only children possess. "She says thank you for saving her babies." Emily knelt beside the wheelchair. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Lucy. I'm sick, but Mommy says I'm getting better. Just like the mommy cat got better, right?" Emily's throat tightened. "That's right. Just like Milani got better." "Can I come back and see her again?" "Anytime you want," Emily promised. "I think she'd like that very much." As the weeks passed, Lucy became a regular visitor. Her health improved gradually, and Milani seemed to sense the child's struggle. The bobcat would often spend entire afternoons by the viewing window when Lucy was there, sometimes bringing her cubs to show off, other times simply lying close to the glass as the little girl read stories aloud. "She's never done this before," Tom marveled. "It's like she understands the kid needs her." "Maybe she does," Emily replied. "Maybe that's what happens when we stop seeing animals as just animals and start seeing them as fellow souls sharing this journey with us." The seasons turned, and with them came more changes. The zoo's Bobcat program expanded to include education initiatives, with Milani as the star, though always from a respectful distance. Virtual reality experiences allowed visitors to walk through Bobcat habitat, while live cameras in the enclosures let researchers and students worldwide observe natural behaviors. One crisp winter morning, Emily arrived to find Milani in distress. The old bobcat, she was nearly 15 now, ancient for her species, was breathing heavily, her movements slow and painful. "It's her time, Doctor," Coleman said gently, his hand on Emily's shoulder as she knelt beside her old friend. "She's had an incredible life, longer and fuller than any of us could have imagined when she arrived." "I'm not ready," Emily whispered, tears streaming down her face as she stroked Milani's graying fur. "We never are," Tom said, his own eyes wet. "But look what she's left behind." Through the viewing windows, Emily could see them. Milani's children, grandchildren, even great-grandchildren. Hope nurturing her own latest litter. Spirit's son recently returned from a successful release program, strong and vital. Grace, now the matriarch in her own right, maintaining order just as her mother had taught her. Milani's breathing slowed, but her eyes remained fixed on Emily's face. In them, the vet saw not pain or fear, but something that looked remarkably like peace, like gratitude, like love. "Thank you," Emily whispered, pressing her forehead gently against Milani's. "Thank you for trusting me, for teaching me, for changing everything." As the sun set that day, painting the sky in shades of amber that matched Milani's eyes, she slipped away quietly, surrounded by those who loved her. The zoo fell silent, staff and volunteers gathering to pay their respects to the Bobcat who had started it all. But even in grief, there was celebration. The next morning brought news that made Emily smile through her tears. 3 of the released Bobcats had been photographed in Yellowstone, the first confirmed sighting in that area in over 30 years. The breeding program had officially been classified as a conservation success story by the International Wildlife Federation. And Lucy, now a healthy, vibrant 10-year-old, had announced her intention to become a veterinarian, just like Dr. Emily. Standing before Milani's memorial, a beautiful bronze sculpture depicting her with her first surviving cubs, Emily reflected on the journey. From a wounded, frightened animal who wouldn't let anyone near her, to a mother who changed the fate of her entire species. From a young, uncertain vet to a confident conservationist who'd learned that the greatest bridges are built not with words, but with trust, patience, and love.